Hi, this is Anna Crowe with the Get Real podcast, where CEOs, CMOs, and communications experts share their real advice. It's 5 questions under 9 minutes because we get to it real fast. So let's get to it. I'm so excited to have today's guest on. In a few sentences, could you please tell us who you are and what you do?
Sure. My name is Thomas Winstanley. I'm the VP of Marketing for Theory Wellness. We're a vertically integrated cannabis brand on the East Coast with 5 locations between Maine and Massachusetts.
Fantastic. And Thomas, I know you guys have been very busy over the last few months in particular and have a lot going on. So we'll cut right to the chase. This particular podcast is about creating authentic connections. And I hear from other leaders that creating those connections, particularly with customers, but also employees and vendors, can be challenging when it's very noisy out there. What's your take on that?
I think there is a lot of noise out there. I think with the options that marketers have and the options that consumers have, trying to find those two different points to connect with them can be really difficult. I always use the audience to educate me on where they want to be communicated and how to create authentic ties. I think especially in a day and age where we're getting blown up from all different messaging platforms, I think trying to create really good, true connections with consumers, the easiest way to do so is for them to guide you in what they need from you. And I don't think there's any one size fits all method between any industry, nor is there any one size fits all based on the role of a channel. But I always make sure that when we're looking at some of these options and we're looking at new channels, we need to make sure that there's a strategic intent that's going to meet the customer where they are in terms of their needs, from anything from customer service to email blasts to text messages, and really letting them guide us in where they want to be met. And that can change based on your industry. And we always try to stay as true to that as possible, especially in somewhere as heavily regulated as cannabis, where there's a ton of red tape around.
So if I'm hearing correctly, really listening to that customer, right? Understanding what their needs and demands are and responding that way to create that authentic connection. Is that accurate?
Absolutely. And a consumer will let you know if you're not in the right place, or if they prefer another way to be communicated with. It's okay to fail. Actually, failure in communication can be a really positive, because then you can cross something off your list and say, we don't need to try that again. But I think especially for a company like ours, we're scaling and growing so fast, we're reaching a lot of new audiences all the time. And so there's never a binary, this is the way that we need to do this. It's more so, does Maine respond better to text messages versus emails in Massachusetts? We collect a lot of really good data based off of those performances, and we cater to whatever we feel is working. And honestly, that's a moving target. But at the end of the day, it's the consumers who are telling us if we're reaching them in the way that they want to be reached. Because if you miss, they'll also let you know that they don't want to hear from you in this way.
Fantastic. No, those are really great points. And I love that advice. Do you have any other real advice for other leaders? Is there anything else that you think is really important?
Yeah, and I think, especially at this point in my career, the pursuit of knowledge is a never-ending journey. And it doesn't matter from a personal or a professional standpoint. If you're passionate about what you're doing, spend the time to get better at it. I think the world is moving at a really, really unprecedented pace. We've seen the pandemic change a lot of how we operate from a day-to-day standpoint. And I think a lot of the challenges that we've faced are going to create a lot of innovation. With the amount of innovation we start to see, there's going to have to be adoption and an understanding from a lot of different levels. And so for a lot of the professionals who are on my team who report to me, I'm always challenging them to expand their knowledge base. I think once you get to a place of complacency where you've run out of things to learn, you start to toe a line that I think is not always beneficial to a professional or personal pursuit. The world is too big of a place to even stop or consider not learning. And so I try to task my team, pick up a new skill. Is there something you want to learn? Is there something that we can expose you to that you find interesting, that you don't know anything about? And I think that's something that is I think at a lower level position, that's something that is often, we look to coach and mentor, younger employees, but I think that scales all the way up to a leadership level. And especially for those in emerging industries like ours, we move at the speed of light, and to be able to stay at that pace, you have got to continually be reinventing what your knowledge base is and challenging yourself to learn more. Complacency can be a very, very dangerous thing.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's great advice. And I love your examples around it. And absolutely that challenging yourself to learn, that having that growth mindset. You- it's always one of those, you don't know what you don't know, but sometimes I think about the more I learn, the more I realize,
Yeah.
wow, I still have a lot to learn. So
Absolutely, and it's a thread that you can continually unravel. The more and more you pull at it, you actually start to delve in. You deepen your understanding of what you're doing. And I think if you're in a role that you are confident in and you're mature in how your growth trajectory is going, the pursuit of education becomes something that is self-sustaining in a way that's actually hard to break once you're in that cycle. And I think taking the foot off the gas on that education loop it can be a very dangerous thing.
definitely. Very cool. Well, before we get to our final question, are there any other successful executives such as yourself that you would like to acknowledge or perhaps give a shout out to while you're on this podcast?
I appreciate that. I would be remiss if I didn't mention Brandon Pollock, our CEO of Theory Wellness, and Nick Friedman, our CFO. They have done an incredible job of building an organization and an operation in its emerging space, with the ability to let teams lead the way that they need to lead and have chaperoned this wonderful success. In addition, I'd also like to shout out two other guys in the cannabis space, Ross and Zach Lipscomb, who are two brothers who are the co-founders of Dutchy, and they just got a $200 million Series C last week. And it announced some huge changes, and working with those guys as well as Brandon and Nick has been really, really fantastic. And if people don't know about them, they should look these guys up.
Nice, nice. I love all the innovation in the space. It's very cool to see.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, our last question is more of a fun one. Can you tell us about your first job?
Yeah. So I'd thought about this in a long time, but I had the greatest first job ever, which was being a tennis instructor. Actually, teaching tennis at a young age with young kids was one of the best forms of communication that I think you could develop. I think marketing always comes back to how do you distill something and make it accessible to someone who may feel like it's inaccessible. Teaching a little kid tennis is probably one of the more challenging things, but that was my first job, and sometimes I still think about how much fun I had in those days. A lot
Nice.
easier.
Yeah, I love that. But also customer service, right? Some of the basics, customer service,
Absolutely.
different types of customers. So
Absolutely.
yeah, very cool. Well, how can people get a hold of you or learn more about the company, what you guys are up to?
Sure. So people can follow us on Instagram. You can find us on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn at Thomas Winstanley. And certainly, hopefully over the next few months, we've got a lot of projects in the works. And we are a young, hungry company. We operate a lot more like a startup than we would a traditional corporation. And so if people want to learn more, hit us up at theorywellness.org. If you reach out through any of our customer service channels, I oversee them. Messages will get filtered out to me at some point. And so for anybody who has inquiries about what we're doing, feel free to reach out.
Fantastic. Well, really appreciate you joining, and thanks so much everyone for tuning in. This is Anna Crowe. For more insights, visit us at crowepr.com. Thanks so much.